Okay. Hello, everyone who's joining right now. Welcome to Halt the Decline, Increase Donor Acquisition with AI. Thank you for being here with us today. We have a lot of people joining into the Zoom, so I'm going to give it a few minutes to let everyone filter in. This has been a very highly anticipated session. We're very happy to be here with you today and excited to get started. If you're just joining us, make sure you hop into the chat box, say hello, let us know where you're joining us from, your organization, say hello. We're happy to be here today.
We really appreciate all the chats and letting us know where you guys are from. That's really amazing. They're being flooded in here, and it's awesome to see.
All right, hello, welcome. If you're just joining us, this is Halt the Decline, Increase Donor Acquisition with AI. It's great to see how many of you are here from all over the country. Make sure you drop a hello to all of us in the chat box. We still have quite a few people joining, so I'm going to give it a few more minutes to let everyone get in. This is an interactive session, so the chat box is open as well as the question box. So if you have any questions during the session, drop them into the chat box or the question box. We'll be sure to answer them as they come in.
All right, we can get started.
Okay. Yes. So I'm going to do a fresh cut for a nice clean recording. You will be receiving a recording of this webinar as well as the presentation deck after the session, so no need to take notes. You will be getting a copy of everything you see here. So here we go. Welcome to Halt the Decline, Increase Donor Acquisition with AI. Thank you everyone for being here today. Next, please. So just to walk you through the agenda of what we're going to cover, I'm going to be introducing you to our panelists who you see here on the side. Then we're going to do some poll questions to hear from you and our audience to kind of gauge where you all might be with your donor acquisition. Then we're going to talk about some of the biggest challenges facing nonprofits today. And then we're going to cover strategies for increasing donor acquisition and then leveraging the right partner and technology. And then we're going to have time for Q&A. During the session, we will be answering questions, so feel free to use that chat box or question box if you want to ask our panelists anything. So to start, we're joined by Nathan Chappell. He is the Senior Vice President of DonorSearch AI. Thank you for being here today, Nathan.
Great to be here. Looking forward to a great conversation.
We are also joined by David Blyer, who is the co-founder and CEO of Arreva. Hi, David.
Hey, Gabby, thanks for putting this together. And I just want to say thank you to our panel of Nathan and Chris for doing this today. And I just want to thank the audience for participating, and hopefully you'll get a lot out of this today.
And then last but not least, we have Chris Fink, who is our Chief Operating Officer at Arreva. Thanks for being here today, Chris.
Thanks for having me. And big thanks, like David said, to Nathan for taking time out of his busy schedule to be here as well.
Yes, and I'm Gabriella. I'll be your moderator today. So I'm going to go ahead and launch our first poll. It's going to pop up on your screen, and then you'll have a few options. But this question is, do you feel your donor acquisition is getting easier or harder year after year? We have a good idea of what your answer might be, but maybe it's staying the same. Maybe it's getting easier. Maybe it's getting harder. We're going to be talking about different strategies to hopefully help it become easier year after year. Okay, I'll let a few more answers come in. We have a lot of you joining us today, which is awesome. Okay. So here are those results. So no one answered easier, which is pretty interesting to see. It seems to be the majority is finding it harder. Okay. Our next question, we would like to know how many applications are you currently using to manage donor activity? We tend to find that most nonprofits are not using one. They actually tend to be using more than they realize when we ask this question. So it's always interesting to see. And if you aren't sure, that's okay. You can just put a guess of what you think it might be. But we're going to talk about some of the different options you have to kind of eliminate multiple applications and multiple siloed solutions. Okay. Let a few more answers come in there. And I'll go ahead and share these results. Okay, so it seems the majority to be around 2 applications.
Okay.
Oh, which is interesting. Okay. Well, I'll let you guys go ahead and get started.
Okay. All righty. Thanks, Gabby, for the introduction. All right, let's address some of the challenges that nonprofits are facing. I don't want to be too doom and gloom about this, but I mean, in general, the fact is that nonprofits, organizations have benefited from unprecedented donation growth over the past 10 years. And, you know, donors particularly who have contributed over $5,000 drove a really large increase, 69% increase in total donations over that time. But we are now facing headwinds on the donor side, both in terms of acquisition, retention, and giving overall. Donor acquisition and retention has decreased across all donor categories in 2023 so far, with donor retention falling approximately 20% from an already kind of low level, which isn't great. Even worse, major donors are declining, donating about 10% less overall in 2023, and new donors are giving less, which is not great either, giving about 34% less so far this year. So really the need to address donor acquisition or retention is just, it's vitally important, to all nonprofits. Go ahead, David.
Yeah. Oh, actually, if I could just jump in, when you don't want to be the doom and gloom person, I'm usually the person called in to be the doom and gloom person. So I wrote an entire book about it last year, the generosity crisis, which doesn't get me invited to a lot of parties, but it, I think it's important that you started with this slide, because when we talk about, the need for change, it's important to understand why. Like, Gabby, your first slide or your first poll question, around this idea of like, this is getting harder. Like, I spent 20 years in the nonprofit side, raising money, leading nonprofit teams. And I had this kind of internal sense of like, gosh, it just feels like it's getting harder every year. But I thought it was only me. And, for many years, kind of looking, there wasn't really a lot of data around this, like this type of data that's just so clear in what's going on and kind of this decline in charitable participation. So I thought it was just me. There's a lot of comfort in knowing that, like, you're not alone. Like, that poll slide was just insanely evident that like a majority of nonprofits are feeling, almost every year. If we had another poll question is, are you asked to raise more money every year? And it's probably close to 100% of organizations are like, yes, my goal goes up every year. I've yet to find an organization where their goals go down every year. But so at the same time, you're asked to raise more money, but it's getting harder, more money from less people. And so, to give you just a real quick snippet of, the generosity crisis, all of this is good data, but this is really the first time in 12 years that we've had both a decline in the number of people who are donating to charity, but also charitable dollars going down. And it's not just inflation, it's just systemic decline, that essentially brings up this point that, if we don't do things differently, we know what the result will be, right? With the data is very clear on the trajectory that philanthropy is going, that if we don't reevaluate what best practices in donor acquisition look like, or retention, and looking at how to increase lifetime value, that things will continue to get harder for us. And so I just appreciate starting out with the why, so that we can, in this presentation, get into more of the how.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's someone actually asked, that's an interesting point in terms of causation, Nathan, how much COVID played into this decline. I mean, you said it's systemic. Does the pandemic, did that have an effect, or how much did it have an effect?
Yeah, well, and I should say this, of course they can buy the Generosity Crisis for $22 on Amazon, but anyone who can't afford that, just send me a DM in LinkedIn and I'm happy to send you a PDF of the book. This is more about sparking conversation around generosity, not about, no one writes books to make money, by the way. So literally just put it out there. But, COVID actually had this opposite effect for most organizations. So there was a small glimmer of hope during COVID that COVID was going to reignite this community passion that we had not seen for a very long time. In fact, many organizations had the highest increases that they've had in many years in charitable participation. Because they were addressing, specific things. So healthcare and organizations that were addressing, last mile needs. But other organizations failed miserably during COVID. The arts and higher ed were really challenged during those. So there was definitely winners and losers. The reality is, and I don't want to derail this for more than 2 seconds, is that the confluence of circumstances that have led to these numbers, the dramatic decline in charitable participation that all of you are feeling, and that's why it's getting harder, is a confluence of many factors from religion to government to your iPhones and the different ways that people can give or express their generosity. And so it's a very we already have a slide here, which we won't have to get into too much. But to answer the question, COVID had this kind of unique effect where there were winners and losers, but there's many other reasons for it that I think are worthy of nonprofit professionals to really dive into to better understand how their organization fits into that.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. Well, thanks, Nathan. It's a great segue into these slides that one was the slide prior to this was really about defining what is donor acquisition, right? It's really about developing a strategy to identify and solicit potential donors, right? As well as reactivating those lapsed donors. And like you just mentioned, and we've mentioned earlier, new donors fell by almost 20%, right? So we need to address that. And what are the causes? Obviously, as you mentioned, Nathan, there's many, and it differs across the types of nonprofits that are out there. But in general, we've seen, this is an interesting stat I just read, Nathan, about total charitable giving has fallen only 3 other times in the past 40 years in current dollars. That was 87, 2008, 2009. Obviously those were times of economic uncertainty. So obviously that's a big factor. And it's just ultimately, I think what we're trying to say is it means organizations have to do more with less, right? You have to be more efficient. You have to be more targeted in your ask. You have to, having actionable data is very, very important, right? And imperative to be able to really improve your donor acquisition and retention, right?
Yeah. And yes, there's a lot of competition out there. That's the other thing. When you look at just demographics or your own community, I know in South Florida, there's over 12,000 nonprofits in a very small radius. How do you compete with that when you only have so many people that are giving donations? And then the movement, I don't know if there was just one reason why this has declined, right? We talk about COVID, and COVID definitely affected a lot of things. There's no doubt about it. But did you pivot in time for that? Demographics of people moving and wanted to support the new community that they were in. How do you target them? What are you doing to do that to increase your donor acquisition? There's a lot of other factors in that. And I think, just to touch on those reasons why some of these struggles are happening, I think there's a lot of different reasons. Nathan, you brought up a few, Chris, you brought up a few, but the changing economy, right? People are not giving as much. They're giving less, right? They're being a little bit more selective where they're giving. Maybe they used to give 100% to their faith. Now they're giving maybe 80% to their faith, and they're giving 20% someplace else because of the need in the industry, but they only have a certain amount to give. So there's a decline when they're moving that around. You have those economic conditions on that. I think just with the movement and demographics, and people haven't moved back to the original states, even though COVID is over. So, there's those challenges. The communications, I mean, we talk a lot about communications, and, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But today we have to be more targeted than ever before, targeted to the audiences that are in your existing database, targeted to those audiences that can help with donor acquisition. It can't be one size fits all anymore. I think, certain things that have gone on and communicating the impact to certain types of donors hasn't been relatively there. And I think there's a lot of other factors that play into that, right? Even in technology, I think technology has to change. Your technology, I know technology isn't always on the forefront of decision making, but it should be. I mean, there's a cost to it, but there's also a cost to the decline. There's a cost to reaching new donors. Will that technology help you? Why is technology inefficient sometimes? Because when you have multiple systems, like we did on the poll earlier, and you have multiple, maybe you're doing an event registration and you've got to pull that data and put it into your donor relationship management, or you gave a tribute gift and you didn't get that acknowledgement. Is it helping with that decline? Literally, because you have that. And it goes back to that lack of communication where you need to be more efficient. Are you segmenting that data that's in there? And we'll talk a little bit more about that segmentation. So there's a lot of different, it's not one factor, whether it's the economy, whether it was COVID, whether there was still a trickle effect on that. But I think there's a lot of factors, and we will talk about those ideas today.
Yeah. I think on that note, and we stay on this slide for one more second, because I know we're going to talk about AI, but technology as a whole, right, is like essentially the primary reason for the decline. And I'll go back and again, and actually everyone who's is amazing, like that is, signed up for a free copy. Gabby is taking your email addresses and I'll send those out later today. But at the end of the day, and for those that you bought the book, thank you. But at the end of the day, when we look back at where this decline started, this is, again, I spent 20 years in the nonprofit, in the fundraising field. I thought it was just me. And I thought these were new problems. And I realized that it wasn't just me, and these are not new problems. And so we actually did a lot of history, like going back into history. And the first decline in charitable participation, really, and kind of this disassociation of your community, started with the biggest form of technology, the television, after World War II. And it was really that form of technology that, instead of going home and talking to your neighbors and volunteering and being involved in your community and your PTAs and donating blood, like you were just like, I just want to go home and I need to unwind because it was a long, stressful day. I'm just going to go watch TV. And, fast forward, many decades later, we all have televisions and computers in our pocket. And so the level of distraction is just paramount at this point. The reality is what I think what most people recognize at this point, or hope they need to recognize, probably the most important part to recognize around technology and donor acquisition, is that you are not competing for philanthropic dollars. You're not competing for discretionary dollars. You are competing for connection. You're competing, and by the way, you're not competing just against other nonprofits. That's always this fallacy of like, well, there's 1.7 million nonprofits. There's so many. They're all going after this like finite amount of discretionary dollars. No, you're competing against every for-profit organization that is using technology to essentially mine connection. And so it goes to this quote, which I love, from a person named Tristan Harris. Tristan Harris, many people probably saw the movie The Social Dilemma during COVID, because what else were we doing? The Social Dilemma talked about how AI in general was essentially creating this race to the bottom of the brainstem. And keep in mind, these are for-profit entities. So like individuals that are, this race to the bottom of the brainstem is for-profit entities that are trying to get to the bottom of my brainstem so that I just like, I can sleep about, dream about this product I want to buy. And it's like, oh, it's going to annoy me so much until I buy it. I've got to buy it. Those are for-profit entities that are trying to get into essentially the psyche using AI. Well, fast forward, 2020, the social dilemma to the AI dilemma today, which is, technology's gotten better, not surprisingly. It's no longer a race to the bottom of the brainstem. It's a race to intimacy. And so we could probably go to the next slide, because this is actually like really kind of gets into the heart of this. That's for-profit organizations are no longer trying to sell products. They're trying to create intimate relationships with people. It sounds very familiar to nonprofits. That's what we've been doing forever, right? This is like, that's our playbook. Like the nonprofit sector creates intimacy and the sacred space between a donor and a mission, so much that, we're fulfilling each other's destinies, if you will. And so, at this point, we really look at where we're at in the world. And, I think most nonprofits are not even in the game. Like it's like when we're trying to compete for more donor acquisition, because we're raising more money from less people, it's getting harder. We're just not even on the field yet. And so if we're good to go to the next slide, we can talk about kind of the differences. And this is not intended to be a 1 hour, crash course on AI, but in its simplest terms, just literally it's one slide. So like, you can just bear with me for a second, is that AI can be a very confusing term to a lot. And we talk about AI, in everyday life. It's hard to not hear about what's going on. Is Sam Altman hired or fired, or who's he working for today? And, might be running a petting zoo tomorrow. Like, we don't know. But at the end of the day, AI is like in everything we do, right? It's in our phones, and it's in our cars, it's in our Roombas, and everything else in between. I think what most people don't realize is that there's really two main domains of AI, and they get very confused about this. And it, frankly, for most nonprofit professionals, is very overwhelming. When we're talking about a new era of fundraising, and this idea that, we kind of coined precision philanthropy after the term precision medicine, which precision medicine is this idea that every person is unique based on their own genotype, and so this idea that a medicine that could help one person could actually hurt another person. The same is true in philanthropy. When we think of every donor, and we'll get into many practical examples of this during the session on segmentation and prioritization, but it's this idea that every person is unique to your organization, that every person is no longer a donor or a prospect. They're a unique individual that has a degree of connection to you, and that connection will change tomorrow, and it will change in 2 weeks and 2 months and 2 years. The main areas within AI that help you understand that connection is really predictive AI. This is the type of AI that Amazon and Microsoft and Google have been doing for a very long time, like really doing it well for 15, 20 years. We just started doing this back in 2017, and we've gotten really good at it. DonorSearch, we're leaders in this space. Like essentially understanding every person as an N of one, you're an individual. What is your degree of connection today and tomorrow and in 2 weeks? So that's predictive AI. The other part of AI, the cool part that lots of people like to talk about and follow right now, is this generative AI movement, right? And it's transformative, because if I think back 20 years ago when I was running the Boys and Girls Club, like if I had generative AI then, I would have just crushed it. Like I would have been able to compete at a much higher level, because I would have had a grant writer and an HR assistant and a legal assistant and an analyst and all this stuff at my beck and call. But I think what people don't really understand, and I'll end on this part in kind of our lesson on AI today, is that while one is really focused on precision, the other is focused on personalization. So if you only have personalization, no precision, that just means you have more of stuff. Like it's just more, but it's not very targeted. It's like throwing, spaghetti on the wall. And if you only have precision, but you have no way to activate it, you don't have ways to make it personalized, then it's just like, well, that's a really nice spreadsheet. It's really what's happened today. And this really strong inflection point for the nonprofit sector is the ability to have precision and personalization together. This has never happened before in the history of mankind. So all of the negative numbers that we saw from going back to, World War II and the television entering, its way into our lives, it could be reversed potentially. If we do this right, there's a tremendous amount of optimism here, because we've never had the ability to call in precision and personalization at the same time. So that's why I think tech leaders now, like, especially in the AI for good, quote unquote, space, like, we're really optimistic that, since Aristotle talked about the challenges of giving away money 2,300 years ago, there's never been a time in history where these two things have come together. And so this is truly our opportunity to harness this technology and to, sounds so cliche, work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, there's actually a question in the chat, Nathan, that just come in. It says, I am brand new to development. Are there specific programs that could help me implement AI into our nonprofit?
Yes, there's actually a lot, and we'll actually show you an ecosystem later in the in this deck where we talk about the combination of DonorSearch with Arreva all together. Yeah, we'll get there. That's awesome. Thank you.
Well, now that we talked about the stats, and Nathan, that was really a great definition for all of us. That was really great. Let's start talking about some ideas and strategies that these nonprofits can start from the bottom up, because it is a combination of AI. It is a combination of segmentation. There's so many other factors. So why don't we just jump in and start giving you guys some ideas and a funnel approach to identifying and reaching, acquiring some new donors, and we'll jump into that.
Sure. Yeah, well, I mean, this dovetails perfectly with Nathan's discussion earlier there. Like you said, David, I mean, leveraging the data that you have, but also, leveraging intelligence and data from other companies like Nathan's, DonorSearch, and really using that information to foster deeper connections, like Nathan just said, right? Which is really about how do you optimize those relationships with your existing loyal donors, as well as building relationships with new supporters, and you have to track this information. You have to understand why they're giving to you. You have to analyze that. Did they just come to an event once? Are they are they a recurring donor? Are they giving you $20 a year? Could they give you $10,000 a year instead of $20 a year, right? All that information can be gleaned from your existing database that you have, assuming you have good data, quality data, which is a whole nother story, but also supplementing that with information from other sources like DonorSearch and AI. So really, someone actually asked in here earlier, I don't know if you saw that, Gabby, if I have more targeted communication with my donors, wouldn't I be limiting the people that I'm trying to get? Wouldn't that limit the donations I'm getting? No, I mean, really what you're trying to do, like Nathan's point, is really try and connect with those people at their level, right? And that means you aren't sending out a solicitation to everybody with the same language, right? Asking for the same amount. You're trying to understand better what is their capacity to give, what's their likelihood to give, why have they given to you in the past, what are the connections, have they only been a volunteer, how are they related to your organization, why do they give, or why would they want to give to your organization, and really try and communicate that through your different marketing channels, through your communications, et cetera, right? I mean, that's really what it's about.
And I'll add to that too. I mean, it really is, even without AI, there are lots of tools that help you look at essentially lots of different data elements together to give you a better sense of, like, is this person going to go the distance with us, right? It really goes back to efficiency, because you can't treat everyone equally, in the sense that not everyone can get a visit in their living room to share all about your nonprofit. Like, some people should get an email, some people should get a phone call, some people should get a visit in their living room. And the reality is that, while AI can, with a high degree of precision for organizations that have lots of data, can give you a sense of people that have very high lifetime value and are going to stay with you forever. But even outside of that, like some of the tools that DonorSearch has had for a really long time, like the DS scores, like we have these scores that score everyone on, it's not 1,000 data points, but there's a dozen data points of, like, okay, this is a person that has a higher degree of retaining with us. And that's, again, I think one of the pivotal shifts that we have to make in our head around this idea of acquisition is that more is not better. Like, I blame myself. I mean, for 20 years, I worked in a nonprofit where I always thought more was better. Like, I could just, like, dump more money and get more, and find more people. And I knew retention was horrible, but I knew that even if I could like increase like my lifetime value by 1%, like, oh, it was worth it because like we came out ahead. The reality is that's just like a really inefficient, bad approach that turns people off. So essentially like spending more time focusing on really smart segmentation, like that's where like analysis and segmentation, that's where really you're going to have the biggest bang for your buck. Is that, again, focus on people that have a higher degree of increasing their lifetime value. And honestly, it sounds hard, but like it's okay to bless and release other people. Like they gave to you once, it was episodic, that's great. Like, but they're maybe not your lifetime donors. Focus your energy that you're saving from blessing and releasing those people to people that are going to go the distance with you. And again, like tools, by looking at like within Arreva and all the different kind of KPIs or analyses that you can look at, is like, how engaged is this person? Intuitively, you can pretty much see people that actually care. They're raising their hand and saying, we want to know more. And then use tools like DonorSearch that go way beyond just wealth data. It's not enough to say, oh, this person's wealthy, therefore we should spend a lot more energy on them. Like that's actually a really bad practice. And I work at DonorSearch, and I can say that. I can say that using tools like that, like a DS score, or our most likely to respond score, or AI tools, or insights. So there's so many other tools other than wealth that will give you a better indication of how to segment people appropriately with a much higher degree of return.
And Nathan, to that point, I think that's a really important point, because if you can really identify them, and however you're doing that with DonorSearch, segmenting your database, that's what should give you, and this is where we go back to build that compelling marketing campaign that resonates with those audiences, right? It's, again, it's not that one size fits all. I mean, you could be nurturing and acquiring new donors that are actually new donors in their own right, in their beginning. So if you really understand and how that means to them, and you can generate what that mission is to them, and how their donations are going to be impacting the organization, and build those stories around that, and personalize that, to go back to what you had mentioned earlier, because this is where you are personalizing and tailoring those type of messages, is really important. But it goes back to really understanding that audience.
I would say, and before we go to the next slide, I think it's so healthy to have a slide like this, because this represents a moment in nonprofits that, this type of work was always like back office, which is like my least favorite term. It was always a thing that happened kind of like on the side if you had time. But if you kind of change your mindset to like, if you're a for-profit organization, this is where you start. Like, this is like, no decisions are made within an organization without looking at all of these things and spending lots of time with your leadership team on all of these things. I think this is that moment where nonprofits have to, like, this is not something we do on the side because it's like, it's a side hustle that we do when we have time. This is something where you start with this with your leadership team, and you spend a lot more time than you've ever spent on this area. Because one nonprofit leader said it to me best the other day. He was hiring us to do some AI work for him, and he's like, look, I don't know what happens if we use AI, but I 100% know what happens if we don't. The reality is the data is very clear on what happens if we don't do these things. So it's time to like recognize that and say, okay, like, let's reshift our priorities and where we spend our time.
Yeah, and I love that you say that, and I agree with you, because if you really segment out that data and you really understand it, however you're doing that, whether it's the physical segmentation, the AI, initiative that you have going, the compelling story, and once you really do understand that, we're in a different world today. How are you distributing that? Because in that segmentation and in that type of audience, your audience exists in many different areas. You can't do the traditional all emails. I mean, Nathan, to your point, certain people have phone calls, certain people have emails, certain people have texts, certain people are only looking at LinkedIn, certain people are only looking at Facebook or Instagram. So you've got to understand the different platforms, and that's why we're looking at this of where do I send that? Because again, it's not one size fits all, and you're trying to resonate and it is a very competitive environment. So when you have the tools through DonorSearch, through Arreva, through whatever platforms you're using, and you got to utilize that in the best way that you can. And we know a lot of organizations out there are extremely limited with resources, right? We hear that every single day. I'm limited with resources, but you can do this with limited resources. You also, and I was just recently on a phone with an executive director, ironically, from a Boys and Girls Club, and they didn't have their database set up, and they needed it, and they were running an event. And he was, challenged. How do I get this out further? Collaborate with your influencers, collaborate with your partners. He did an amazing job at getting sponsors. Those sponsors are alignment. There's always, I talk about alignment a lot, but if you can co-brand your campaigns and understand that marketplace and understand their type of employees, there's reasons why they're supporting the organization. And you can use those as other channels, not just marketing channels, but influencer channels and sponsor channels. And I think it's really important to think like that. So I appreciate that, Nathan. That was a really great point.
Yeah.
The next thing is when yeah, go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
No, you go.
No, please. You
I'll open and you finish, and then
Nathan, please jump in, because this is right up your alley as well.
Yeah, I mean, really, this was just this is exactly what you're saying is, David. How can you don't have to do it all yourself, right? Companies like Arreva and DonorSearch can help you communicate your story with impact, right? I mean, and tying the impact of someone's donation or someone's support, doesn't have to be a donation, it could be other ways, to the impact it's going to have on your organization, right? And this could be done through the solicitation. You could do it on your donation forms. We have an Ronald McDonald House who has a donation form that ties the impact of that specific amount of that donation to, hey, this is going to pay for housing someone in our facilities for a day or two or a week. Really tying the impact that their donation is going to have to your organization is super important. And also the follow-up, contextualizing follow-up after someone's made a donation. I can't tell you how many times I've been in organizations and talked to them, and they struggle even getting out thank you letters, much less contextualized thank yous based on where that donation came from. Sometimes it's an auction purchase, sometimes it's a gift that they're giving recurring, but how are you thanking them? Are you thanking them? And if you are you tailoring that follow-up communication to the donor on why they gave and the program they're supporting? Are you personally thanking the larger donors? Are you recognizing them individually? There's a lot of things that you could be doing to really, I think, help communicate that. Sorry, so go ahead, David.
No, and those are great things too, Chris. I mean, everybody here has a differentiator. There's a reason why you have that organization. And I really, you need to share that compelling differentiator if you haven't done that. You've got to think, why should a donor choose to support your cause? Right? Why should they do that? And how will their donation at any level have an impact? And I think sharing that type of impact is just truly relevant. And there's so many different ways of doing it, right? I mean, there's different ways, whether you're building videos, because maybe that resonates with certain audience, or video testimonials, or an infographic, whatever it's going to take to communicate that story with impact is really important. And that's really what that's all about. Nathan, you're on mute.
Sorry, of course it had to be me. I'll just riff off that for 1 second, is that, with the decline in charitable participation and this idea that it's getting harder, the one thing that remains true, and is more true today than ever, just because the world is so big and so fast and so interconnected, that as people trust less externally, so people trust in every study that you look on trust, so the Edelman Trust Barometer talks about this, that people don't trust the government, and they don't trust the media, and they don't trust for-profits and nonprofits, and to whatever varying degrees, is that as people trust less externally, they tend to place their trust more internally, meaning that into your local community, into your, with your coworkers and your closest friends. That's a huge opportunity for nonprofits. Like, one thing is that, again, if you get away from this idea that you're trying to appeal to everyone in the world, but you're trying to appeal to local impact, and you use the word impact a lot, David, which is spot on, because it's like, especially if you look at like Gen Z and even Gen X's is that honestly, like the tax status of your organization doesn't matter as much as the impact that you make, right? Because I can give to GoFundMe and make an impact. And if it's easier for me to do that and bypass your organization, I'm going to do that. But the opportunity for your organization, even if you're a large organization, is to act and appear local. That's really where the storytelling comes in. And definitely storytelling is not my like forte. Like I have so much like credit to people who are really good at it. But I think that real opportunity right now is for nonprofits that not every size nonprofit, big and small, has to appear and act local, because that's where people are placing their trust at this moment. The good thing is, and I can't not control myself in not talking about AI. So like if anyone has lunch or dinner with me, they'll know that AI comes up a lot. But like the reality is, like, even if you're not a great storyteller, like I'm not, guess what is? Like ChatGPT is really good, or Claude or Bard or Copilot, whatever you're using, really good at coming up with different ways to tell a story, to sparking ideas on how to create analogies for things that you're trying to explain. Like, again, going back into and I love seeing Boys and Girls Live because it's where my whole nonprofit career started. But if I had the ability to like riff off of a machine, it's like, get me started about communicating my story of impact, whatever. It's read every book on philanthropic psychology. It's read every book on psychology, let alone philanthropic psychology, ever written. I've done a lot of testing in this, and it's really good, not as a final copy and paste, and never put anything confidential in a large language model. I always have to say that, but like every person can be a better storyteller now because the tools that we have available to us basically for free. So I think it's, again, using the tools that you have to act and appear local. And that with smart segmentation, you're going to have a recipe for success.
Nathan, I love that you say, Gabby, if you could post for everybody, because I think a story is worth 1,000 words anyways. I really enjoyed it. And you're talking about Boys and Girls Club. So I'm going to pick a Boys and Girls Club that I liked. And, we talk about, visualization, and we talk about grabbing the messaging, and we talk about impact reports. But what do we mean by that too? I'll just give you one small example. There's a Boys and Girls Club out of Salt Lake City, and right on their homepage, they have a lot of KPIs that they measure, and there's quite a few. But they took 4 of them. I think it was 4 of the most important ones that they wanted to resonate with, to share with their local community. To your point, in the community, how many meals they were serving, what the staff was. If you could just bring that up in the chat and let everybody look into that. Feel free to copy it, go look at it. I thought they did a really good job at sharing their impact right there. The other nice thing is, with technology, and I'm here to share that with you, but if somebody gave a donation and you wanted to click on that and not push them off the website, right, which is typical, and they click on that, you can redirect them to that homepage or redirect them to another page that may have an impact that you would want them to read while they're on it. And that's another play of how you're making that impact and communicating, even with technology, because you want site engagement to go up as well. These are just some of the other examples. So
important. I shared this thing on LinkedIn last year, and I'm doing the same thing again this year, but I collect all my solicitations that I get, my mail solicitations, and it drives my wife crazy. But last year I got 8.7 pounds of solicitations and only 1 impact report, like printed impact report. And so I do the same thing this year. It's looking at like 8.5 pounds. So maybe we're getting better at mailing less, but again, only 1 impact report. So I love that. And the opportunity, again, to act and appear local means that you are displaying like how money is spent. Like, you trust me because we're invested in your community, and we're going to share with you how money is spent. It's just something that has been, it's often forgotten or not prioritized. So it's great to see people in the chat. Susan had just said they do impact report is so good, so important.
When 61% of donors worldwide prefer to giving online, that says a lot. So you need to really think about your website, first of all. And I think what we would call having it as a donor-centric website. It's really important not only to make it easy for them to donate, but keep them there to increase awareness and site engagement, right? So those are just some of the things. How does AI, Nathan, play into that from your perspective?
I mean, the reality is, like, with AI, all of AI can be measured in only 2 things, like precision and personalization, but it's in real time, right? And so like AI tools that are one is, there are a lot of AI tools that are helping you kind of in the moment, right? Understanding like, is this person likely to activate or upgrade or become a sustainer in the moment? So, I mean, clearly, like that's where using big data has the ability to like help give you insights in what this person's going to do, not like in 2 weeks or 2 months from now, but like in the actual time it's happening. And organizations that have seen, the like dramatic increases, in being able to mine that data, essentially in real time. And it's no surprise, like, I mean, online giving is super easy, right? It's like, if I have to go and like go onto my desktop anymore and like type in all this stuff, and it's like, I just want the easy button, and remove like the bad kind of friction. But that also means that, there are times where we've removed the human element. We've taken opportunities for the human element in the giving process. So, I'm a board member at a nonprofit called the FarmLink Project. And literally this morning, we were talking about like every single person that makes a gift, whether it's $20 or $200,000, gets a phone call. Like every single person, gets a handwritten note, so I don't know. I think you can remove the friction and allow for online giving, which creates a lot of efficiency for you, but don't lose the human element, because that is, that's how you build credibility in telling the story and how you build those longer term relationships.
And I think one of the other nice things I always, when I heard about like multiple giving, right, and unlimited donation pages, I wasn't really quite. I thought I was going to see, multiple donate buttons on one page, and what I really like to see is, when you can identify and you can have what I call unlimited donation pages, as opposed to having, in your menu bar ways to give, and you click on that and it drops down, having one page. And there's so many different variations. It's amazing what you could do with one page on an unlimited giving donation page, and explaining, for $10, your $10 is going to go to a welcome bag for when you come here, or $25 is going to help underwrite the cost of a day for a shower for a family, or $2,500 is going to underwrite this. And I really love this stuff. I think it is so compelling and helpful, and it shows a lot what you could do. Another great example, Gabby, if you could put that up, is the Ronald McDonald House of New Mexico. They did it amazing. And I have other examples if you want to hear from them. But that was just another one of an unlimited donation page when you could identify, or you're sending out a certain email, but you want them to see everything in one page, right? So those are some pretty important things. And I really think, about, as we're talking about this, even granular things like tribute gifts and memorial gifts. This is true engagement. It is true acquisition, and it is really true retention. And it really is important when you have that ability as a donor to come in and give a tribute gift, whether it's in honor of or in memory of, and literally put in the person's name, the person's email, a comment, and send this back as a submission of what that donation is. That individual should immediately, who is the recipient of that donor giving a tribute gift, get an immediate acknowledgement. And one of the challenges I know that's out there today is they're not. They're expecting the organization to receive the information and then go and do something on that acknowledgement side. That alone is not helping with donor acquisition. It's hurting with donor retention, and it's hurting with donor engagement. But there is solutions out there that will address that. And you want to make sure that the person that's giving has immediate acknowledgement that they know that donation has been accepted. They have received an automatic thank you acknowledgement receipt. The individual organization, it could be one staff member, it could be multiple staff members, receiving a notification of that donation and the individual. And that's another outreach. And if you think why this is important, I talk about alignment. And alignment is where, if I'm a donor and I'm giving to a humane society, I am not going to give to a humane society as a tribute gift to this individual if they're not aligned or have a value with that type of organization. And when you have that type of alignment, this is where you can now achieve increasing donor acquisition, because now you have them in your database. Now you have to create certain best practices. Part of this is where you get that immediate notification. And yes, we're all busy. If you have that ability, because now it's on your phone, it's on your computer, you can look at this, make a phone call, say, thank you. Would you like to learn more about our organization? We want to thank you for being aligned with such and such. These are little things that really help with donor acquisition, but it also plays extremely well with engagement and acknowledgement.
I want to go, if we can put in a few questions, because our question Q&A is blowing up over here.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
We have a couple questions on how do you build a prospect list using AI?
Yeah, so building a prospect list via AI is really interesting. So there's many different ways of using AI, and it depends on which product you're using. But if you're using AI in the way that it's intended to be used, it's like understanding that N of one nature, like an individual and their connection to you. It's really interesting because all the data will show, like, when AI categorizes every single person and their likelihood to respond, the people in the top 20% of that AI model end up having lifetime value that's about 18 times higher than a one-time donor. So essentially, the methodology is take the people that are going to stay with you. And, but what the AI is telling you is, like, these people are going to stay with you, not just today, but in the long time. Prioritize those people. Like at DonorSearch, we offer multiple different levels of scores. Like, we have full custom AI that we do, which gives you the very high degree of precision. Then we have these insight scores that are actually very affordable, that give you that direction of like this third of people are people that we want to prioritize. And it's really taking those AI insights and then using a product like Arreva to really activate that work, right? And then it also, as much or even more importantly, it tells you the people that you shouldn't spend a lot of time on, which sounds like depressing or counterintuitive a little bit, but AI probably tells you more who not to talk to than actually who to talk to save you a lot of time.
For time reasons, why don't we just look at, we're still talking about multiple ways. And, Nathan, even on peer-to-peer fundraising, I think this is an incredible tool to reach new donors. When somebody is so passionate and they're willing to help the organization, I mean, like you said earlier today about GoFundMe, and I think it's a good platform. I think that platform really resonates well, with an individual, and maybe they had a personal situation, a personal friend. It really does not help the nonprofit when somebody goes out and does a GoFundMe. And the reason why that is they will get a check. But as an individual, because, and my friend sends this out and I give a donation, my friend's getting the check, the organization isn't getting any other information except that one-time event. And if you have that technology built into your platform, that they can build I'll say like a GoFundMe, which we'll call a peer-to-peer, which is completely integrated and part of an organization. And they're building that. They're sending it out, first of all, to their friends and their individuals that they would believe that there's some sort of alignment, or at a minimum give a donation. But you are capturing all of their relevant information when they do give a donation. And then again, it goes back to they're receiving an automatic thank you acknowledgement receipt. The organization is receiving a notification, not just that they received a donation, but they received a donation based upon the host for that peer-to-peer, which gives them another opportunity to reach that new potential donor and drive that increase in donor acquisition. But then you also want to acknowledge, and I didn't talk about it earlier, but anything that you're doing, whether, I know there's a question about volunteers, whether it's volunteer you're being a volunteer, or you're raising money for a specific time frame around peer-to-peer. I've seen peer-to-peer used in so many different ways, but acknowledging the people that are actually building it. It could be your board members that you're using it, and even though they may have a financial responsibility and you've given them a different way to raise their money, there's another way of increasing that donor acquisition, right? Through their friendships and their peers and their networking, and they are giving a donation. So it's another way to reach out in a very proactive way. I mean, that time delay is a problem, right? So if you're really getting all of this information instantaneously, and maybe you can't respond immediately, but you should be able to go into that database and segment out and say, I want to see everybody that gave a donation this week, and assign maybe different levels to different people, depending upon how you identify them through AI, identify them through segmentation, however you've identified them, and then reaching back to them and asking, can I add you to my database? Could I invite you to the next event? Could I send you my impact report? So there's other ways of increasing that. And I think, allowing that to happen, and then encouraging the people that are actually doing that. Make them big supporters, acknowledge them, have an event for them, that you help identify this, that you help increase this amount of, it's not always just about the money either, right? I mean, money is helpful, but it's also about adding those new donors, right? And if you can, the more people that you add and the more they know about what you're doing in the local community and how that is impacting and what their donation is doing, is only going to help you increase your awareness and increase that capital raise and do some other wonderful things. So there's a lot of, and we have a lot of different points up here to talk about, but I know we're limited time. Nathan, I don't know, or Chris, if you want to touch on any of these points before we move to a couple of case studies.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the beauty of peer-to-peer, David, we see so many of our clients to be successful with it. It just amplifies those fundraising efforts beyond your staff to donors and prospects that you don't even know about, because you've got these people raising money for your organization, acquiring new donors through their network of friends, etc. The other benefit is I've seen too is all nonprofits struggle with getting, not all, but most struggle with having their board go out and ask for money, and having committee members and staff do that. This allows them to do that through the peer-to-peer platform in a less intimidating way. So we see a lot of board members are willing to use a peer-to-peer platform to ask for money in lieu of actually maybe going out and doing it face-to-face. So Nathan, if you have anything to say, please.
I selfishly, I would just say all the data that you collect through peer-to-peer is extremely helpful in understanding the connection that a person has with you. And so it's like sending out surveys. Like it's equally as powerful of just looking at that engagement activity, that experiential activity, to help better understand and measure that connection of an individual to your organization.
And then I know we only had an hour today, and I just love talking about a couple of case studies. And here being in Florida, I just took to Florida, even though I know this is a national webinar, but I thought we identified two, and we'll do it quickly. But one was a local organization. It was truly amazing. I had an opportunity to actually go meet with the executive director at the beginning. Their facility was in shambles, literally. I mean, they had less than 20 kids in there after school. They had an IRS bill. I don't know how they did that. And they had less than 50 constituents in their database. They had no website. They had no technology. I mean, they weren't even known in the community, which is really, at the time was sort of disappointing. You talk about 180 degrees. Well, that's exactly what this executive director did. And honestly, he was a police officer. And because he was a police officer at the schools, they made him the executive director. And he came up with some really creative stuff. He segmented out the community. He started building out his database and all the funnel things that we talked about. He started building an impact report. He started segmenting who he should send it to, whether it was corporate sponsors, whether it was local businessmen, or whether it was local families. I mean, they just did an amazing job. Their first event, it was an overkill. It was a long weekend. It wasn't even one event. It was multiple events. It was a spaghetti night. It was a run and walk. I mean, they did team challenging and team fundraising. They just did a lot of things. And today they have over 5,000 active donors. They have over 500 kids. They have an incredible website. They have an incredible facility. They've done all the right things, and they've exceeded all the numbers that anybody could have ever expected. And the last one, which I always love talking about because it was always near and dear to many of us here, but this was an organization that was really looking for a cause of curing what we call glycogen. There's deficiencies. There's multiple deficiencies. They needed to raise $8 million. That was determined by the research center. They went out across the United States. This was an all-volunteer organization. They did so many amazing things. They built their database incredibly. They have so many different events that are going on yearly. And the beautiful thing is they continuously sending out how that money was impacting during the research time. The most amazing thing that always gives me goosebumps is they actually achieved a cure already for one of the deficiencies, which was type 1. And now they're on to type 2. It's an incredible story. They exceeded all their goals. They kept on moving forward. They changed their website, which was always interesting, to be not only a fundraising website and a donor-centric website, but a very big impact. It's extremely informational now because now they're very well known within the community of, glycogen, and they've just done some amazing things. But they truly funneled and followed that funnel of building that database, segmenting that, they know who their audience was. And even though families, and it's a niche area, they were receiving money from others because of the way that they were showing what that impact was. And people, even if they didn't have the deficiencies or a family member didn't, they were giving money. So they really did an amazing job on this stuff. And then just talking about, before we get into technology, Nathan, did you want to say anything about that? Or
No.
Okay.
No, and I know we're pretty much out of time. So yeah.
So if you want to touch on the challenges that are happening and with different platforms, I'll leave that to you, and Chris and I can jump in on that.
Yeah, I mean, and fortunately, we've been able to talk about this. I mean, lots of usually too much data, too many systems, not understanding how to prioritize it and melding it together. So I think it's this, opportunity right now, and I think the next slide, or I think it's the next slide actually, brings it all together. I mean, it's really this, again, opportunity to leverage all the different resources that you have, and of which DonorSearch is really proud to be a part of. I know that was one of the earliest questions, is that when you can work with an all-inclusive CRM provider that kind of leverages all of your data in the various ways that you need to use it, and then you can bolt on things like DonorSearch that just work together, then you've got a winning strategy. So it's not about building it on your own, having it all on your own, but it's like having partners that understand the value of all the disparate data sets and allow you to leverage it. And so again, I put that little note in the chat for anyone. We want people to just try it out. The DonorSearch aspect of it. I assume a lot of people on the call are already Arreva clients or are going to reach out for more information about how Arreva works. But we are really committed to giving people access so they can make smarter decisions with our data. And so in the chat, just follow the instruction and reach out to Frank, and we're going to be giving out some free access.
So with that, just I think there are a lot of clients on here, but I think a lot of people know about Arreva, but we've been around for 30 years. We have many applications that we do provide and offer, and I just want to share that with you. And the nice thing about it being in the cloud, and it's truly fully integrated and automated as one unified database. The nice thing is everybody doesn't have to buy every application, right? These are just things that we've identified that the nonprofit as a whole, whether it's fundraising or donor relationship management or healthcare hospitality or auction software, is really what we're providing in the marketplace. When we talk about donor centric, it really is about everything being mobile, right? Whether it's your website, whether it's all of your applications, and then results are really important. These are some of the results that, between, DonorSearch and Arreva, that our customers are really seeing a return on their investment. I know a lot of you had multiple systems, whether it was 2, 3, or 4, and there was a lot on that, eliminating that movement of data, right? Having one system that's fully automated. If there are financial responsibilities of a board, they're achieving their 100% of their giving, because nobody is being pushed off the website anymore, whether it's a donation platform or event platform or team fundraising platform, and they're staying on your website. Site engagement is automatically going up. And I know we've talked very shortly today, even though we have a lot more information on donor acquisition, but we are actually seeing an increase on donor acquisition with our clients that are truly using the software by over 300%. And we do so many wonderful things like what we're doing today as educational webinars with Nathan and DonorSearch, and they've been a great partner with us. So, if you need any other information, we'd love to hear from you. With that, Nathan and Chris, I'll let you guys close it out.
Thank you all, and for the people that stayed on. I'm still 133 people, which is awesome. Reach out definitely on LinkedIn. So Nathan Chappell on LinkedIn, Chappell. Definitely, ask for more information. I know there's a lot of questions that we didn't get to. Happy to answer those questions offline, one-on-one, sending you to the appropriate team, and really a lot of great questions and good engagement.
Yeah.
So, no, thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, and thank you, Nathan, for attending. Appreciate it. And thank you, Gabby, for organizing it.
And I would just like to thank all of you who are attending. This community, this world needs you guys, and what you're doing is an amazing thing. And that's why we're here. We love what we do. We love helping the nonprofit industry. We're very passionate about it, but we are only a single source in what we can provide. So thank you for all that you do today.
Excellent. Take care, everyone.
Awesome.
All right.
Are we off?
No, let me go ahead and end this.